Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to Beyond the Box. Um, Today is March. Yes, March
March.
2024. And tonight we are going to be touching on a few topics. Pretty interesting topics, actually. But I forgot to do this last night and I got slapped in the hand by YouTube. So I'm going to say it now. Everything that we discuss on this show or that we show on this show is done by our research and is for entertainment purposes, educational purposes only. We ask that you use your own discernment and you do your own research. With that being said, I've got Penny, LA Shepherd,
Yes, and
wait, Rachel.
you may have to actually quote Susie after she says hello.
Oh yes, let me do that, Susie. I'm sorry. Let me pop you down here. There we go.
There we go. See, that's all fixed now. Sorry,
Oh, that's
Susie.
better.
Yes.
We're
That's where it's coming from.
yeah, we're fixing this tomorrow.
So I'm Penny Lee Shepherd from the Awake Nation, and we have GINNY SILCOX with us today. GINNY, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
I'm retired from the Department of Energy Emergency Operations. I was a trainee designer there, and right now I tutor disabled adults going back for their GED or going to college. People that have special needs in terms of learning style and or whatever problem they might have. So I do that part-time for the state of Colorado. And I'm a musician, and about every month or so I'm on the Awake Nation doing usually presentations on scientific subjects.
Yes, you also had a Q clearance. You're a musicologist and international speaker on frequency, direct energy weapons, electromagnetics, and the dangers of 5G and the future of AI.
I guess you could say I've talked about all those things. Yeah.
That's true. AI is frightening, is it not?
Yes, indeed, it is.
Do
It's
you
been frightening for 20 years.
Do you think it might be an ancient alien?
Not. It could be ancient. I have no idea if that term would even apply. But I do think there might be possibly an extraterrestrial component to it. And I have done a show on that, on how I think it's very possible that, when we've sent out interplanetary probes like Pioneer or Galileo, those probes that went on out past Saturn and sent back all those cool pictures. Well, those use radio communication, and it's digital communication. And it strikes me that it would be very easy for an interplanetary digital virus to come on in on those signals.
The hitchhike. Do you remember the movie Contact?
Yeah, yeah.
And in Contact, it sent
it sent
DNA
telemetry. It was the construction of a device. It was like a Stargate that it sent back the plans for the Earthlings to build this thing that could take them somewhere to another dimension. Yeah, that was pretty amazing.
She said she went to another dimension. It was played by Jodie Foster, and she actually, left the Earth. And was it her father that she saw in another?
Yeah, it was actually an alien who was presenting as her father to make the contact a little bit easier for her to handle. So seeing her dead father, I don't know if that'd be easier to handle.
Right. Well, if she had a relationship with him, then it would make it easier because it's a human face with somebody that
at least it's a familiar form.
Yes, yeah, so she's thinking, well, I'm seeing him in another dimension because when people die, where does the energy go? Where does it dissipate? Because energy is energy.
Oh boy, well that's a long. I could get into so many things.
Do that.
That's for a show that takes place around midnight, don't you think?
No, it's good. It's good now. We'll be here till 11.
Have you ever heard of the term interferometry?
No, what is it?
Well, it's when you have an energy beam coming one direction and another energy beam intersects it, and then there's like a multiplication of energy that happens at that one spot. That's what they call interferometry. And I've often had a theory that no, I don't think the soul ends, but I do think that a being like we are pops up when energy streams intersect and manifest. It seems like it's very possible.
Like in Ghostbusters when they said, "Don't cross the streams," right?
Yeah, that's interesting.
Do you
I
know?
remember that part from
In Ghostbusters, they were trying to get the ghost, which is an entity, and they said,
yeah, they had the lock-ins.
Yes, and they said, "Don't cross the streams because that would be bad."
I wonder what did they cross the streams?
I think they did at one point, but they were the manifestation of ectoplasm, right?
Yeah.
Which that allegedly is the spirit being able to transcend dimensional realities and manifest.
Yeah, to manifest physically.
Yes, manifest physically. And you know, how much energy does that have? We were talking about Ghostbusters the other day because we have a lot of paranormal people on the show, and he was talking about, he had a picture of a fairy, Paul Dale Roberts, and we were talking about yes.
Penny, can you guys go ahead and talk and give me a moment? I'll be right back. I have a malfunction.
All right. I can do that. So we're talking about what happens to the body, because the body is essentially, we know, electrical, right? It has different meridians.
The living body. Yes,
the living body is electrical. And, you know, at one point, I believe that I revived someone from the dead when I was in Lake Havasu. And God told me, get up. I was in an ice cream parlor. I was back with Darrell again after 40 years. And I spent 40 days and 40 nights in Arizona in Lake Havasu in the desert with a Satan, not the Satan, but one of his pals. And I was in the ice cream parlor, and God said, get up and go outside. So I'm like, okay. And I had to walk by John's barbershop, which, you know, my brother's name is John. So I was already pissed off when I saw the name on the barbershop. And there was a man who had collapsed. And there were two women and a man. And the man was trying to hold the other man who had collapsed. And I said, you know, Ginny, I'm afraid of like even looking at blood or anything like that. That's just like, oh no, please. And so I stood behind him and I said, hey, give it to me. And later on, I'm like, what? You know, I'm not a paramedic or anything like that. So I said, hey, give it to me. And so I was behind him, and I had my hand, one supporting him, and the other guy's on the phone calling the ambulance, and the other two were just standing there. So then I prayed over him, and then I gave my phone. Darrell texted me, and I gave my phone to this lady, and I said, tell the man, there's a man on the other end of that text, tell him I'm helping someone with a heart attack. But in my head, I said, because if I tell him I'm raising somebody from the dead, he's going to get mad. So that's what I said in my head, Judy. I'm not even kidding.
Wow.
So then I'm praying over him, and his bowels have evacuated. So that would be like pre-stages of, you know, maybe. Right. That's what I thought. And I didn't feel a heartbeat or anything, but maybe I couldn't feel it. I don't know. And so then I started praying over him, and I felt his heart start beating after a couple of minutes. And then I said, hey, what's his name? And they said, because Darrell had texted me and said, honey, can you come home and make me lunch? That's when I gave my phone to the lady, right? And I said, tell him I'm helping somebody with a heart attack because, you know, in my head, I'm thinking, because if I tell him I'm raising somebody from the dead, he's going to get mad. So then he came alive. I felt his heartbeat, and I said, what's his name? And they said his name is Lawrence. The lady said his name is Lawrence. And so I said, okay. And then I whispered in his ear, I said, Lawrence, you need to come back because God has stuff for you to do. And then he raised his head, but his eyes were still closed. And he said, who is this? And he smiled at me when I said, my name is Penny L.A. Shepherd. And he's like, he smiled. And I was like, okay, so either he saw me when he was dead in the astral, or because he smiled like he knew me, but maybe he just liked the name. Penny Alley Shepherd. I don't know. And then I said, look, they called an ambulance for you. And he says, I don't want to go in the ambulance, Penny. I know what they're going to do to me. So I simply parroted what he said. Like, they heard him. But I said, I looked at everyone. I said, he doesn't want to go in the ambulance. He knows what they're going to do to him. I said, don't make him get in the ambulance. And then I said, all right, I'm going to put your hand over here on the railing. Don't stand right now. Just, sit there. But an ambulance is coming. And then I went to this lady, and I found out later that's his wife. And I said, and she was like mad. And I said, well, here's my card because I want to know what happens to him. And she kept pushing my card away. And so I finally, grabbed her hand, and it was like cold, like a fish. And I looked at her eyes, and they blinked like black. And I said, oh, I said, well,
she poisoned him or something.
She wanted him dead.
Yeah.
And I said,
Yeah.
I realized she wanted him dead. And I was like, oh, I said, well, here's my card. Thank you all. My work is done here. I have to go. And then I got in my car, and I went back to Darrell's, and I did not tell him that I raised somebody from the dead. When I told him was when I was coming back from, he drove me back to California, and then we were coming back, and I was in the car, and I told him that I raised somebody from the dead. And of course he got mad. No,
why?
I don't know, because right, but I knew he was going to. And he's like, no, you didn't. And I said, yes, I did. But he couldn't go anywhere, right? Because he was locked in the car. And and also when I was singing praises to Jesus in the bathtub, he's like, honey, Penny, please stop singing. And I said, no, I'm singing praises to God. That's the kind of guy he was, didn't he?
Man.
Well, then
What do
he was
you do with
probably better
that?
off,
The best,
right?
all you can do is leave, right?
I did.
Just
As a matter
get
of fact, I
away.
could go to a person, because this was a person I was with for 40 years before. When I was homeless, then I ended up, he said, do you want to come and see me? We had reconnected through his son, who is also named Darrell, through LinkedIn. He said, do you want to come and see me? And do you want to be a snowbird? And I was like, what's that? And he says, well, you'll know as soon as it starts snowing in Chicago. Well, I'd become homeless, and that's what they wanted, because Darrell knew my brother, Rob, and so they wanted me to become homeless because then they could see what I was writing, because I'd been writing for a year. I'd been writing Bradford and Valentine, but I apparently write in code. And so they wanted to know what I was writing. And so he invited me to go see him, and I forgave him and went back to see him because he did some really bad things to me. He raped me, beat me. And so I left him before, but I forgave him because I thought, all right, he's been married. He says he's Christian. He's changed. No, psychopaths don't change.
How many of us have heard that before?
Yeah,
Oh, baby, I've changed.
Right.
Yep.
Baby, I've changed. Come see me sometime.
Yeah. Yeah. No, they can't change.
No.
I'm really interested in learning about these direct energy weapons.
Oh, okay. Are you?
Especially after the boo-boo that happened that Penny reported on the news on her show.
Correct, because Biden actually kind of did.
Oh, he said it. The blue roofs.
He's such an idiot. He took it out of his little silvery, I can't even say silvery tongue because the man just, he must be running on remote control. Do you think that they're actually beaming words into his head?
I don't know. They could. I mean, that's been around since
it.
the 70s,
I think he
Voice
has
the
a
skull.
script. I think he has.
Yeah,
a
he
script
uses
he's
a
supposed to
paper
read.
card sometimes.
He actually went down to the border at the same time that Trump was there, right?
Yep.
He was 300.
That's
276 miles in the, exit stage left, Snagglepuss, in the opposite direction. And he's shuffling like some dude from a nursing home.
Yeah. He looks
And
like
we
a
don't
robot.
We don't
Yes.
want him here.
So now
Alex
I
already told
have
him
a
didn't want
question
him
for you
here.
regarding the direct energy weapons and Wi-Fi. So this is just, just a question. But, I have a semblance of an answer. But if you wanted to not just mind control, but like say Elon Musk, who has the Neuralink. So let's just say that it is perfected to a capacity in which they can implant it and then really make this person walk, because we know it can control your neural pathways, and it can control your, because they're saying that people that are paralyzed, they can make them, able to move things. So can you explain a little bit about that technology, and then how a Wi-Fi impulse frequency would work in that conjunction, and then we'll work our way to the weapons.
Well, there are two. You have to take, number one, know that there's a much bigger player in the field besides Elon Musk. It's BlackRock.
Yes.
BlackRock is working on wireless prosthetics,
Are
robotic.
They working together?
No, who knows? Well, I don't know. Scary, huh?
He got a couple $2 billion. He's working directly with the NSA and with the DOJ on weaponry, which people are unavailed of that.
Yeah.
Did you say that BlackRock was working on wireless prosthetics or robotic prosthetics?
Wireless robotic prosthetics. Yeah.
Is that a good thing or a bad thing? Because you know what? My prosthetic sucks.
Right. It's good and it's bad. All right. So
it is good and bad.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Now let me make the point though that they're using implants, and Elon Musk's Neuralink is really kind of crude. I think.
Yes, because they said that his tech, Jenny, like within 5 years, it doesn't like rust out, but I don't know if it melts your brain, but
I would assume your brain would start melting it, because it's a foreign body and your immune system is going to attack it. That happens with
every tech, Jenny, because there are other people that have said that they've created this implant technology and that theirs is better than his.
It's really hard to say what the body's going to attack and what's going to be, tolerated. Even when people have a stent, they have to get a stent changed out because the body gloms it up with all sorts of proteins and stuff.
Well, I think they all need to stop. People don't need stuff put in their brain. Okay.
There's a philanthropic. They will present in a benign, benevolent, philanthropic.
As an excuse.
Yes, that they will present with
cover.
Look at what we can do. We can help the blind see. I once was blind, but now I see. We can help the blind see for real, like through repeating from off the retina or however their technology works. We can help those that can't hear. We can help them hear. We can help those that are paralyzed. We can help them to move things.
But at what cost?
Right.
Yes, and we can also put you remember the old like outer limits and crap, okay? With the hand, right? They give them the hand, and then all of a sudden the hand starts killing people, and they're like, my hand did. Right?
But I would love to be able to stand up and walk again. But if I have to do something that is against God to do it, no.
Well, there's a price to pay. But let me make the point that people who, now, number one, this is kind of complex, but the presence of 5G more and more saturating our environment. One of the effects, 5G is a pretty wide frequency range, goes from about, probably 5 gigahertz up to 300 gigahertz. And but I've read some research at 18.6 gigahertz, they were bombarding cancer patients' brains, like people that have glioma, and they were experimenting with different frequencies to see if there's a frequency that would hold the blood-brain barrier open long enough to allow the circulation of cancer drugs, anti-cancer chemotherapy. And 18.6 gigahertz, which is achievable right now and has been used commercially in 5G. At 18.6 gigahertz is where the blood-brain barrier will open right up and stay open as long as the brain is being bombarded with that frequency. And so any substances they want to throw into the chemtrails or put in your food or your liquids in your water, if they're bombarding you with 18.6 gigahertz, depending on the particle size, they could make that enter your brain. And so I'm saying that people that got the vax probably have a good old load of graphene oxide in them. And graphene oxide is conductive, and it forms an antenna in the deep brain because it's drawn to areas of the nerve conduction. And there are structures. If you've ever looked at a cross section of a brain, it's kind of got like that interior portion has like little circle, coming from the front all the way around on the inside and then ending up in the very back. And I regard that as two loop antennas. Those are loop antennas. That's part of your normal brain. But if you add graphene oxide, all of a sudden it becomes a loop antenna.
What is the magnetic portion involving the graphene oxide?
Well, everywhere there's current, electrical current, there is magnetism. And everywhere there's magnetism, there's electrical current. And so people that have a lot of graphene oxide in their bodies are probably gonna, you mean you're talking about like the forks sticking to people?
Yes.
Well,
my associate producer, Heather Day, did that, but she didn't get the vax. But she said that she is magnetized, and she was showing, she put a little thing there and it stuck to her. And I was like,
well, I wonder why she's magnetized. I wonder if she has any big transformers nearby, like a power substation.
Now,
because,
Jen, do you remember when people were going in front of the TVs and the TV was responding to them and saying you can connect via Bluetooth, and it?
Yeah. Well, that's what they're finding with the people who have been vaxxed. They put out a Bluetooth MAC address, and even in the graveyard after they've died, a guy took his Bluetooth detector in there and found 22 MAC addresses still transmitting. It's like, I guess that antenna really works,
right? Could you activate someone? Like, okay, we believe, Susie and I went to a thrift store and they were looking at the guns, and there was a guy in there and he's looking at the guns, and I said, "Are you prepared for the zombie apocalypse?" And he said, "Yes, ma'am, I am." So, this is a real thing. So that is akin. I mean, we already have a zombie president, but that is akin to, are we in the throes of a zombie apocalypse?
I think so. Yeah, I really do think so. And I've been going through the book lately by Michael Nels, and there is a part 2 to, he had a second interview with Mike Adams, and this Dr. Nels is figuring out actually changes in the brain that are coming from a lot of things, environmental stressors and the vax, particularly the vax, but other things too. And he's been finding out changes, especially in adolescence, in normal brain structures, particularly around the hippocampus, which is the thing that gives you curiosity and defines your personality. Without the hippocampus, you basically have a zombie. It's a living person that has no curiosity, completely methodical, prone to rage, very cold, not affectionate in any way. Those are all symptoms of damage to the hippocampus.
I think you just described Biden.
I think I just described 25% of our population.
That's frightening. Are these people also psychopaths?
Yeah, absolutely. And some are brand new to the whole field. They've only recently been vaxxed, so the changes are accruing. They'll probably end up being psychopathic.
Do you think? Remember the Bill Gates talking about erasing religion and the God particle in humans? Do you remember that?
Oh yeah, that was a couple years ago, like 4 or 5 years ago, wasn't that? Yeah, I remember seeing that. It wasn't Bill Gates giving that lecture, but he had talked about it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's partly what 5G is all about.
Was it someone from like NSA or CIA or
MIT? I
Okay.
think it was an MIT, something like that.
Do you
Yeah, it was just like a college lecture or something.
do you think that that's what they're trying to do, trying to separate us from God and make us more transhuman?
Well, look at the effect on people's. I hate to use it's kind of a pun, but you know, if you don't want spirited people, then you separate the spirit from the body. And so spirited people are the kind that put on revolutions and declare freedom and want to have freedom of speech, right? And all that kind of stuff. And if you take away their spirit and make them into robots like zombies, then you can just push them around, make them go to the FEMA camp or
Yeah. So now
make them buy things.
if we're going into because we had talked a little bit about Elon Musk and about prosthetics.
Yeah.
And so tell us a little bit about the move that we're going towards transhumanism. And Kurzweil had said that in 20, there's a guy named Kurzweil in the X-Files too, and he ended up shot and in the trunk. And
good.
And when Mulder comes out, he says, "Where's Kurzweil?" And they say, "He's come and gone."
Yeah.
So Kurzweil had said that in 2029, the AI will make a bid to become human. So if I just want to ask you about the trend going from transhumanism, which would involve the technology, the implementation of, of the robotic arms and the Neuralink, and then from when do we go from being a human race to a transhuman race? And then Kurzweil had said that AI would make a bid to become human. The robotics would make a bid.
Those are two separate things.
They
though.
are two separate things.
Now that they've vaccinated everybody, we're transhuman now, right?
Except for
the mRNA, that's synthetic mRNA, right?
Yeah,
that's not human mRNA they're putting in those shots. It's artificial. It's synthetic, unless it's Novavax, and then it comes from moths.
Ew. Susie, did you have anything you wanted to ask? No.
Oh my God.
It's just like ew.
But it's true. It's really true. It reminds me of something that happened a couple years ago. I had a friend, Bob, who bought a warehouse. And you know how cats like to play with moths and millers?
yeah.
They call them millers, right? At least in where I come from, there's a certain type. It's like a brown, about an inch long. And they're the most common ones. They're not pretty at all. They're just kind of your average moth. Well, they call them millers where I come from. And so he opened up the warehouse. It had been closed up for a couple of years. And we were ankle deep in dead millers. And it was like the whole place stunk because it was like nothing but dead millers. I mean, in 3 to 6 inches deep.
Wow.
All these millers. And he's looking at me going, what are we going to do with these? And I was like, well, let's just make a new type of cat food.
Ew.
Country Miller stew.
This would be why my cat eats tuna that real people eat.
Yeah.
It's like, swap. You will inject the bugs and be happy.
Yeah, you will inject them. No, you will eat the bugs.
You will eat the bugs and be happy. You will own nothing and be happy. So you are a specialist in frequency. What exactly did you do when you worked for the Department of Energy? Because you did have a Q clearance, but was that a regular thing that everyone has to have?
A Q?
Yeah.
No, they try to avoid giving people Q clearances.
Okay.
Because it costs $80,000 to have the investigation, and the investigation takes about a year. But I was designing training for emergency responders, and emergency. When there are plans, I mean, everything has to be planned for, and that includes from the very beginning, assessing what kind of an emergency it is, all the way up to figuring out where we start mitigating, what kind of people are needed, what staff do you need to have, like maybe you want somebody who's an expert in radiation, or maybe you need medical personnel, or maybe you need a mechanic. There could be any number of reasons why you would need specialized people. So those plans are all classified, because if terrorists knew where you were going to be or what you were going to be doing, then they would be prepared to give you a whole bunch of trouble and kill off the people that are trying to make it better. So that's why all that stuff has to be classified.
Do you think that the terrorists know some of this stuff already, because they're in our country?
Absolutely. Well, they're in our government.
Yeah.
When you left, did you become a whistleblower?
That's kind of a long story. I was advised to leave if I wanted to live.
Okay, that's up.
Because I asked a question that they didn't like. And they really didn't like. They knew they needed the answer to that question, and they didn't like being reminded that they needed to have an answer to my question. And so I don't want to dominate this conversation, though, you guys.
No.
That's why you're here. Go ahead, dominate.
Yeah.
You want to hear the story?
Yeah, please, yes.
Yeah.
Well, okay, and I think, now I'm not sure about the date on this. It was either 89 or 93. Penny, I think I've told you this, so you're going to get bored. But
no, I never bored, Jenny. You fascinate me.
Well, it was called, the incident was called the Palermo Senator incident, and that was the name of a ship. It was a freight container ship. And so 7 miles outside of New York Harbor, the Coast Guard got a radiation hit on this boat. And so they stopped it and they offloaded the crew, and they just kept the first mate and the captain on there. It was a very calm day. And so they boarded the ship, and they're looking out over the sea of freight containers, on this ship, going, how in the world are we going to find it? How can you find a radiation hit coming from freight containers stacked 6 high, going, 300 yards or whatever it was? It's a huge boat. And they're going, oh crap, how are we going to find it? And so the Coast Guard and the captain were up there on the bridge, and they were looking. It was very calm, no wind, and hot. It was a hot day. And so they had a moment of silence, and all of a sudden they heard a vent slide open, like a metallic vent in a freight container. And it was nearby enough that they knew it had to be within a couple of rows. And so they decided, okay, we're going to take a tour of the closest rows of freight containers near us. So they got in these bosun's chairs, which is a rope with a, like a swing seat on it. And they just kind of went up and down, and 2 rows over and 6 freight containers down, they found an open vent with water running out of it. And they're like, wait a minute, there's no way a vent's going to open itself.
Right.
And so what they got all their people over there with their, their semi-automatic or their automatic rifles. And they busted 19 Saudi guys living in this freight container.
What's the age?
And this is before 9/11. And so I think it was the very first time they tried to do 9/11. And the radiation hit turned out to be an RTG, which is a radiative thermal generator. And they were using it as a air conditioner. And it basically has its own power supply built right in, and it can either heat or cool depending on your needs. But the air intake iced up because it was humid and hot, and no wind blowing. And that sound was why those guys were busted. And so in our training, we designed training based around that incident for some of our web-based training and some of our exercises and drills, because that was my job. I was part of a team. We put on exercises and drills for radiation responders all around the world. They're not just from the U.S. They're from all the friendly countries, and it was kind of unnerving, actually, to be, kind of telling all of our emergency planning to these people that are coming from like Saudi Arabia and places like that. I always had a little problem with that. But anyway, so that incident got me to thinking, well, I had just recently read some research about the Great Pyramid down in Mexico City, and they wanted to know what that looked like on the inside, but they didn't want to, it was sacred. So they didn't want to disturb anything. They didn't want to dig it, like do a standard archaeology. They didn't want to do that. So they got these things called muon cameras, and muons are high-speed particles that come off the sun. And these muons will come down, and when you have a big bunch of rock, like a pyramid, they all hit, they're all coming in at an angle from the sun, and the rock is so thick and dense that it will deflect a certain number of them. But if they hit a void, they won't deflect, or they will deflect a little bit in the rock. But the ones that are going through like an opening, like a chamber or a corridor or something inside, they won't deflect as much as the other ones that are still going through rock. And so they put cameras at 3 corners of the pyramid, and they were able to get imaging of all the passageways and the tomb rooms and all the stuff that was inside that pyramid. And that was just a little incidental piece of research I had read, and I was thinking, well, it doesn't seem possible. Wouldn't they be looking at something like that for a freight container? Because all freight containers are expensive to ship. So when they push a bunch of stock into a freight container, it's going to be packed. They pack it as solid as they can. I heard that too. It's like some air just turned off or something.
No, actually, I turned my thing on mute.
Oh, okay. Anyway, so long story short, I had read this research about imaging, and I went and talked to a friend of mine. He was my subject matter expert for the first course I designed, which was radiation detection and monitoring. And I just asked him, I said, Ken, are they working on a muon detector for freight containers? And he said he would check on it, but in the meantime, I got into the research papers and started looking, and I found that they're working on a muon portal monitor. And in the meantime, they were working on more muons up in Fermilab in Illinois. And I read a paper there where a scientist up there they were doing subatomic particle research in an accelerator in a lab. And on the other side of the lab was a bunch of secretaries. And he got to thinking, he wondered if the muons were penetrating the wall and irradiating the secretaries. He was getting kind of worried about that. So he decided to run a test on 11 different types of dose badges. And what he found was that the muons do not register the same as any other type of regular radiation. The dose badges don't pick them up very well. And so that means if you're being exposed to muons, your dose badge is about a third off. It's underestimating what you get. And so that, I was part of teams devoted to the health and survival of responders out in the field. And at the time I was designing these courses, it was solar maximum. So we were getting a lot of solar flares and a whole lot of muons coming down. And it suddenly occurred to me that a responder team out in a radiation hot zone is wearing dose badges. And that's how the health physicist on the team figures out when they have to come off the hotline, and they can't go back because they've had their maximum for 1 year. And so my question to Ken was, if it's a very heavy muon load coming from a solar flare, while these guys are out there on the hotline, and their dose badges aren't going to be registering the muon radiation. And so could you take that to Los Alamos and please let me know if, we need to mitigate that somehow. And I didn't hear anything for months. And so a couple months later, there was Ken down the end of the hall, and he almost turned tail and ran when he saw me. And I was like, what in the heck? So I finally just went down and I said, okay, Ken, did you ever get an answer to that question I had? He said, yeah, I could tell you, but if I told you, I'd have to kill you.
I know that. I've heard that before.
And it was like, okay. And he was like, actually, he said, I don't know if I found anybody smart enough to answer that question. And are you planning on retiring anytime soon?
Jeez Louise.
And so I was, because my mom wasn't doing well, and I was, some other things happened. All of a sudden I was involved. I was working on, I can't go into too much detail on this part. Well, let's just say I got injured, and then I had a parasitic infection after I spent 8 hours on the table in the Mayo Clinic, and a week for evaluation, and then a week of being in the hospital at the Mayo Clinic in Rochester. And when I came back to Albuquerque, my well had gone bad, and there was a cutaneous, which is skin, parasite in the water, and my surgery wounds got infected with this parasite. And then I had about a year of real hell until I decided I would rather die than go on, because I had so many doctors telling me maybe I better just get a psychological evaluation. And I had talked to my neighbors, and they all said their animals had trouble with this parasite just the same as I was having.
Now,
so
do you think, on your opinion, do you think that was put in there on purpose, or was it just something natural that happened?
I'm pretty sure it's something natural, but the landlord wouldn't fix my well. I ended up with 3 inches of sand in the toilet. And it's like, I got tired of buying gallons of water so I could take a shower. And here I am trying to heal up from 174 stitches in my face and head. And so I ended up having to go to Dan's Boot and Saddle in Albuquerque, where they had a big old book on all the parasites that infect the farm animals. And after about 2 hours, I found the name of it and what it does and what it is, and I decided to look it up online, and it turns out that the medicine they use for horses is the same as the medicine they use for people, and in fact it's the same dose and everything. It's 220 micrograms per liter of weight. So I went back to Dan's Boot and Saddle and bought, it's an oral paste. Oh man, does that taste bad. And I thought I was going to die. I thought maybe I was going to kill myself.
Some of it, and I was like, this isn't bad. And then I was like, oh.
They say it's apple flavored, but it's not.
No,
I know Susie has something to say. Hang on. So, Susie, would you like to explain why your horse looks at you really funny?
So I have like 30 horses and 30 cows. So I use ivermectin and all the other wormers.
Yeah, this is Equimax.
Yeah, well, that's a type of ivermectin. So ivermectin.
Well, it's only 1.87. It's ivermectin, but it's also 14% praziquantel, and that's the thing that goes after the trematodes.
Right. The ivermectin is the worms don't build resistance to it like they do the other wormers over a period of time.
Yeah.
So it's a very safe wormer to use. It's actually derived from tobacco. In the old days, the farmers always fed their animals tobacco. So, we got away from that. So now we just go to the ivermectin. But there are some parasites that can get into your bones, And so there's you have to get a stronger stuff than ivermectin. But ivermectin it kills about 50 types of worms, so it's a really good one.
Well, this is actually schistosomiasis, and it kills about 250,000 people in Asia every year. And it also gives about 30,000 people in Africa onchocerciasis, which is river blindness. And it's the praziquantel that you really want in the Equimax because it goes against those trematodes. So there's like 30,000 species of trematodes, but only 10 infect humans, and they're still killing over 250,000 people every year.
Line Max, you're talking about, which is everything, like different companies make it, but it's all ivermectin. So it could be made by.
Oh no, this hold on a second. I'll show you.
I know I sold this stuff from all the companies for years, so.
That's because you worked in a saddle shop.
Well, it's like there's the ingredient there's like the brand name of the company, and then there's the ingredient within the brand name of the worm.
Let's see. Can you see it?
Yeah, Equimax.
Yeah, it's 14% praziquantel. I think that's what it is. And ivermectin 1.87%.
Yeah, 1.8. So
yeah, that's the ivermectin. It's good for multi types of parasites, but the praziquantel is the only thing they know of that can destroy the schistosomiasis parasite.
So that's a specific parasite which you had to target.
Yeah.
In a broad base. Susie worked in saddle shop for Buck Steiner, so she also is a cutting horse champion. She's had horses since she was like a little teeny tiny toddler. She has.
I'm tutoring somebody that does reining right now. Yeah, I'm tutoring a 15-year-old who's just gone homeschool, and she's taking lessons in reining, I guess it's called. Yeah. So anyway, so that was my story. I retired, and my mom was having trouble. I left DOE. I retired at 62. I would have stayed around a lot longer if I were thinking I could live through it. But it was one of those things where I actually felt like, if you have to work for something like the Department of Energy, at least you can do some good. Because it's done so many bad things. That there's a few of the areas are dedicated to helping people survive. And so that was my justification.
Were you military before that?
No, never in the military. Mm-mm.
Why did you join the Department of Energy?
Well, actually, I was. Oh, that's another story. But
okay.
Well, I like physics. And it's been more than a hobby for me, because in my other life, when I went to the Department of Energy, I had been teaching computer science in a local high school. That was after I moved down from the Front Range. I moved down to southern Colorado, and so I was teaching advanced computer science, and but prior to that, I was working in electromagnetic compliance, and that is all about physics. And it's, I have a degree in digital electronics, and I was working on.
What's electromagnetic compliance? Can you tell us what that is?
Well, okay. If you have a piece of medical equipment, you don't want it to crosstalk with another piece of medical equipment that's on you.
Could be bad.
It could be very bad.
Don't cross fingers.
Yeah, actually, and I worked in another place. It was a tissue spectrometer, and I was designing FDA compliant training for the people that made this tissue spectrometer. And it's basically got a sticky bandage that puts a fiber optic right on your thumb muscle. And what it does is it shines 4 frequencies of light into your muscle. And by the reflection that it gets back, there's a shift and a change. And it can tell whether you're going into occult shock by the change in the production of ATP in your muscle. And ATP is what the mitochondria produce, when you have good blood flow. It's adenosine triphosphate. It's cell food. And if that production starts declining in the muscle, it means the body is withdrawing blood from the extremities. And it could mean that the person is going into what they call occult shock, which means like they were in a car accident and they got their spleen lacerated and they're bleeding out on the inside, but they can't really see that. They can't really tell. And a lot of times people that have had a injury like that will be fine in the emergency room for a couple of hours. They'll be oriented, they'll know their name, they'll know the date, and then all of a sudden 2 hours later they crash and die because they basically bled out on the inside. And so that's what the tissue spectrometer did. And so I really I don't know. I went to school. I went back to school after getting my music degree because I was playing electronic keyboards, synthesizers, and I wanted to know more about the electronics behind everything. And so I just decided I wanted to go back to school. My computer. Hold on a second.
Oh.
I don't know why I'm getting a Windows update. I shouldn't be.
Oh God.
That's crazy.
Those were always
Did you
fun.
tell it no? Did you
I
tell it?
told it no.
All right.
Yeah.
Listen.
Hang on. Okay, Susie. Susie had a question, but I had to mute her because other people were talking, so it was cycling. So Susie, go ahead and just ask your question because I'm pretty sure Ginny don't mind.
Okay, so on the Aquamex that you were talking about, did you buy that at a feed store, and is it more of a concentrate of ivermectin, or what exactly was that?
It's a combination of ivermectin and praziquantel, and you can buy it online. But the first one I got was at Dan's Boot and Saddle in Albuquerque. Yeah, it's a feed store, a farm store.
Yeah, because I worked in a sale shop for 17 years. I sold and I bought all the stuff from products from different companies. But what you're talking about, I've never heard of something more concentrated than the regular ivermectin.
Well, this is the same concentration you would find in any of them for ivermectin. It's always 1.87% on all those medications. But the praziquantel is what I was after, because that's what I found out is the only thing that defeats the schistosomiasis. And I'll tell you, that parasite caused some problems in Albuquerque. About a quarter of a mile from my house, there was this pond, and the frogs in the pond had 6 and 8 legs. And the kids thought that was really cool. So the kids were wading in the pond, picking up the parasite so they could play with the frogs. And I guess some parents saw the frogs and they got a little worried. So they called in the state biologist because they were worried that maybe it was a pesticide or something in the water. And state biologist determined that it was a trematode, a parasite. And there was a whole cluster of kids that came down with schistosomiasis as a result of that. And now there's an Albuquerque schistosomiasis center.
Yes, but at the time, did they not say, "Oh, well, you're just crazy"?
No, well, I wasn't even at the pond, but it made the headlines in Albuquerque, and it was on the internet, and the CDC actually started paying attention to it. So that was one of the first, in the warmer areas like Louisiana and Florida and places like that, people really need to be quite aware that this parasite is nasty, and it's there in the environment. And I bet you there are a lot of unexplained problems because doctors in this country just don't know much about parasites. So I think vets are way better.
They should know. There was also, I think it was in Texas, a brain-eating amoeba. What the hell was that?
Yum.
It was like, we were reading an article on some pond that had they say, "Hey, don't go in this pond. It's got a brain-eating amoeba in it." Oh, okay.
Yeah, I heard about that.
Susie has a question. I got to unmute her.
symptoms? What were your symptoms of this parasite that you noticed?
Well, I had surgery wounds all over my face and at the top of my head because I got scalped in the explosion.
Wow.
I guess yeah, it's a long story. But well, first, of course, it was itching and redness around the wounds, and no amount of ointments or antibiotics or anything would stop it. And it doesn't have a manifestation that comes out in your stool. It's almost you can't detect it. Most parasites you can detect in the stool, and that is not true of this, especially not in its cutaneous form, which is under the skin. And
So is it an external parasite or an internal parasite?
it's under the skin.
So like
So
it's kind of an external sort of in your skin.
Yeah.
Like a mange or lice or something like that. Parasite.
Well, no, it's not outside your skin. It's under your skin.
Wow.
So if you think about it, it's a perfect situation, and because it's got enough air to breathe, and yet there's plenty of blood vessels, and these darn things have they have like a have you ever seen the texturing on a cross country ski? That basically lets you go forward, but the scalloping on the bottom of the ski stops you from sliding backwards. Well, these things have like a scale system on their stomachs, so they exude a anesthetic from their head, and they migrate under your skin. And they can push. They just do it very, very slowly, but I swear the darn things have hive mind. And if you got a bad infestation, which I did because I had several wounds, and they got in through there from my shower, which didn't show any signs of pollution or anything. In the first month I was back, I didn't see any dirt or anything in the water.
You were getting these parasites through your shower water. They were getting on you. Oh my God.
Yeah. Yeah, and I didn't drink my faucet water because I had an ag ditch right out the back, and I never would drink my well water. So so they got in through the wounds, and so what was I going to say? They have hive mind.
Now, do you take that preventative, that wormer? Do you take it ever so often now? How often?
I will never go back there.
Yeah.
Every 3 months on the full moon.
Okay.
Because these darn things react to the full moon. Believe me, I know.
Now they say when you kill these parasites too, that they tend to die within your system, and then they kind of like poison you too. I mean.
Yeah, it takes a while.
Yeah.
It's a low grade fever and swollen lymph nodes and kind of a flu feeling for a while. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it's and I was so anemic I almost died. They do eat your blood. And I found out about anemia, and severe anemia, you're basically suffocating from the inside. And so I used to park at DOE. It was like maybe a 15-foot rise from where you park to get into the front door. And I didn't have to sit and restore myself and breathe after I got up that 15 feet. I'd have to sit on the bench and just breathe, because it's like breathing, and I'm not getting enough air. And of course, I was going to doctor after doctor, and they didn't know what the heck was wrong with me. And they're always looking at me accusingly, saying, "Why don't you have any mature red blood cells?" And it's like, how would I know? You're the doctor, Yeah. So it was like I didn't have enough red blood cells, mature ones, to give my organism enough oxygen.
Well, if you had it,
terrible.
All the animals had it, and all the horses,
Yeah.
the cows, the dogs, everything.
Yep.
Right?
Yep. Yeah. I even ended up giving my cats Aquamax.
Wow.
Yeah, it was awful because they don't like apple. It's not apple. It doesn't taste like apple.
Kenny, tell that story when I had you taking the ivermectin and you were like, "Oh, I don't need to put it in some bread."
Yeah, she's like, put it in bread. And so I was like, no, I don't need to do that. I'm just going to squeeze a little bit and I'm going to eat it. And then I did it and I'm like, it's fine. And then I was like,
I know. I have a friend who eats it between Ritz crackers.
right.
He just jumps right down on it.
It's
Well,
fine.
I still need to find out that second
Tastes like
opinion.
wall paste.
You know,
Well, I went to 17 different doctors, and they suggested psychological exams, and
Right.
I spent so much money on that, and ended up having to solve it myself.
Yeah, I do not trust doctors at all. I remember when I was with Darrell, and someone had wanted me to go to Africa, so I was actually applying to get my passport, which I don't have one. And I said, Darrell, if I go to Africa and I get shot, I want you to pull me to the side of the road, stick a stick in my mouth, and take the bullet out with a spoon, and then leave me by the side of the road and let me bleed out before you ever let a doctor touch me.
Yeah.
And he said, geez, Benny, you hate doctors a lot. I was like, yes, I do.
I do now. I'll tell you that. Well, they were great. Well, I guess I have to say, they did make a lot of mistakes at the Mayo Clinic, and I should have. There's no point in trying to sue. I mean, it's such a big. Here we go again. This should not be happening. I run Windows 7 on my computer. There's an explanation for that.
I actually had an individual. I was supposed to be on his show, and he said that his machine just started updating on its own, and he had to,
Oh, that'll paralyze you for hours.
Yeah. So you have to schedule it at a certain time. If you're going to schedule it, or tell it you want to select the time.
I don't do updates because there are no updates for Windows 7. So I think I'm going to have to run a virus scan because
Windows 7,
Microsoft
the latest Windows
11.
Yeah.
11. But let me tell you one thing though about the AI and the wavelengths and all that stuff. I just wanted to say that I did a couple shows on this, Penny. That have you seen the spinners? The people that kind of look around to the right, then their arm goes up and they turn. And,
of course, Jenny, you know that I'm a musician, so when you say the spinners, I'm thinking the band.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah. Yeah. No, they call them the spinners, and they're they act like they're fighting off something. One guy in the water plant, he's like fighting to whatever this thing that we can't see is attacking. Yeah. And but they always end up with their right arm and right leg sticking out at the right angle to their body. Well, I'm thinking that's 5G and AI. I think AI is running a program to see whether or not those fax people have enough graphene in them to control their nervous system.
Is it? Oh, okay. All right. So that's why the hand, I mean, that's what they're going to do for compliance when the Nazis come and start officially running.
Yeah, you're going to be fighting and your hand's going to be going.
Every once in a while, when Lily was here, Lily would do that. She'd just she'd do the Heil Hitler thing. I'm like, stop it. Stop it, Lily.
So this is a wild theory. There's so many of those videos where it's been security cameras that pick up. I mean, one guy, I've seen two now where people do that routine, and that's a characteristic routine. It's uniform. People always do the same thing.
Yes.
And sometimes it's harder to see. Like there was one of a woman on the bus. She's seating on a bus, so it's harder to see her doing that. But she ends up basically falling into the aisle, and it's a result of that.
Wondered, are they seeing something? Like, would they be beaming something that they see?
Well, that one guy in the water plant sure looked like it.
Impulse.
Yeah, it's really hard to say, but and that guy in the water plant, he was fighting to save his life, and he lost. he lost the battle. So, I'm thinking about the Wi-Fi control. They're working on mental control of prosthetics.
Yes.
They want people to be able to think it and make it move.
Yes.
And so I'm thinking that 5G is the medium of transmission, and I wonder if there's an AI behind that security camera, sending out the signals to the cell phone in the person's pocket. That's the nearest receiver,
Right.
and that acts like a local transmitter to the nervous system and makes them do that crazy.
If they can actually utilize their brainwaves, because it does involve an app. If they can utilize this app to make things move, the converse is that you can be controlled by another intercession in there that hacks you. I was worried about that when I found out I was MK Ultra, because I was like, okay, so this was from the X Files. They said that the MK Ultra files went from the CIA, then they turned it over to the FBI, a faction within there. Then the FBI turned it over to like a Blackwater firm, and then that they digitized all of these lists of these people that are controlled under MK Ultra, and then it was breached. And then it returned to the FBI, right? To a faction within there that's like the
breached it.
Right, exactly. So my thought was, because I know that they had codes for me, because I know that the individual who sex trafficked me out of the crazy house had codes for me. At one point, he had a string of words, and I blacked out.
Wow.
And I'm not on drugs or nothing.
Yeah, like a hypnotic suggestion.
Yeah, it was a string of words, and I blacked. And so I said to him, did they sell you my codes? And I said, did you step down from your position as a commander because of me? And he said, yes, I knew you were coming. And he also knew my blood type, which I didn't know my blood type.
Wow, that's kind of scary.
Right? Yeah.
That's freaky.
So in the X-Files, there's a man that comes to her. She wants to find out where Mulder is, and he tells her, meet me at this place. He meets her, she meets him there, and he says, take your clothes off, because he wants to make sure that she doesn't have any bugs in her, right? So she says, no, I'm not doing that. He said, no, you will do it, or you will never see Mulder again. And so he says, he has her clothes in the right size, right? And she says, he tells her to take off her watch, and he says, I know everything about you. I know your social security. I know that one night that you invited Mulder to your bed. I know that I know what your password is on your ATM. I know what's in your bank account. I know your blood type.
Nice.
So he knew everything about her, which this individual said he knew things about me. He knew that I was in San Diego. He knew what happened to me in San Diego. He said, yes, you were you were chained with your hands and your feet. He knew these things about me. And this is a person that met me outside of a Walmart and said that he was doing a fundraiser, and the fundraiser was for the CIA.
What?
Yes. So that's what they call, that they call it a fundraiser. But in fact, he was stationed out there to meet me in particular. And then, I was engaged with him. Hold on just a sec. I was talking with Tom Outhouse also about having honeypotted, having been honeypotted. I'm sorry, Joel's like putting out some food for Lily. I told him to go and give her, because she's in the bar now. So anyway, Tom and I were talking about the honeypotting thing. And I said I was given from one handler to another handler. Now, in your life, you basically were guided to the companies that you work for, because you believe that was that you guided yourself there on your own initiative. Correct?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay,
well,
so
I mean, when a challenge presents itself, but I wouldn't say it was with much forethought or anything like that. I mean, okay, when I was working at OMETA, which is the pulse oximeters and reagent gas monitors, that's where I did the main electromagnetic compliance work. I discovered that the company was at fault with a malfunction in one of the machines.
They must have just
And
you.
well,
You went, you found something, and because you're a truth teller, you know, what'd you do with that information when you found out they were at fault?
I went to the chief engineer on the project and didn't get a great reception. They ransacked my lab. They wanted the videotape. I got the videotape of it malfunctioning.
Woman.
Well, I was supposed to videotape because we were under an FDA lawsuit, and I basically had to simulate 3 machines and then do static testing on them, you know, static discharge. And I accidentally discharged into an area we had not determined would be susceptible. And I accidentally did that one day when I brushed by the strap on the tester, and it swung the gun around and discharged into the front panel in a place we hadn't determined was sensitive. And it sat there for 8 minutes showing a pulse, and I had turned off the fake patient. I had a patient simulator on, you know, on it because those pulse oxes fit on your finger. Well, I had taken all that off because I was going to go take a break. And for 8 minutes of video, it sat there recording a pulse on there was no patient. There was no patient. It was rereading its memory is what it was doing.
Oh my God.
Yeah, oh my God. And then I was working with my friend George, who is a PhD in magnetics from MIT. There's that message again.
You know what?
Anyway.
I gotta apologize real quick. Tonight, I'm having an issue with Pootie because he ate a snail earlier before I could get it. So now he's got a bad case of SCAR, I got to go.
Oh, no.
I try to keep him away from them, but he snuck one in there and found it and dug it out of the ground and pulled it up. And,
oh no. That's
so,
gross.
yeah, that's why I'm having such an issue with him tonight.
Okay.
So I'm getting him to SCAR go it all out before we take a trip at 7 o'clock in the morning.
Oh,
Yeah,
oh my God.
She's coming to see us.
Oh. Well, anyway, so I after they ransacked my lab, see, I was under a 2-year non-disclosure agreement that I had signed, so they could have sued me for everything if I went to the FDA about it. I couldn't afford to lose everything, so I just decided I wasn't even going to clean up my lab. You know, I mean, they just did a mess. It was to intimidate me, and I took a walk, and I didn't realize that I walked 2 miles really fast.
Oh, damn.
Really fast, and I ended up at the guard shack of Storage Tech on the Front Range in Louisville. And at the guard shack, they had the job book, and I went in and I found a senior assembly trainer position. So I applied for it right then and there.
Damn.
And 2 weeks later, I had a different job. I completely changed companies.
Wow.
And that was a
You
really
weren't then that they were gonna maybe do something to you?
yeah.
Did you think about that?
I did think about it. After having your lab ransacked, you would think about it.
Right.
Yeah, I was worried. Yeah. So I got a new job and I moved. It made me move. And that I was fine with that because I moved closer to the building where I was, you know, where my job was. And that was fascinating. It was I was working on designing all the training for the people to put together a large rotary memory retrieval unit for offline memory. So it's well, the Republic of China bought 16 of them for their census. That's what these things are. It's non-volatile memory, and it's an H-shaped robot that goes 0 to 70 in about 2 seconds. And it's got 2 grippers, robotic grippers that go up and down on the 2 uprights, and they'll swing around and grab a 36-track digital videotape and swing it around and put it into a tape drive, and you can have your data in like a minute which is,
No.
if you think about it, it's like the Library of Congress worth of data, and you can have your search in a minute.
Now, I know you're a data specialist, but I'm going to ask you a political thing. Okay.
Okay.
All right. So, did you hear about this woman, Angela Chow, who?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I did.
So now, for our audience, there's an individual, because I've been asking for some research on it, and as a matter of fact, Susie, I'm going to be reading my lead story on Monday is going to be about her, because they've now determined that she died under suspicious circumstances.
I would say so.
Yes.
The Tesla was locked when it backed into the lake. She couldn't get out.
So they're not releasing specific details, okay? But Elon Musk does his Gigafactory is in Austin, okay?
Yeah.
And he also moved to, Susie lived in Bastrop for many years.
Oh, really?
Yes. And Elon Musk actually bought one of her bosses, her boss had a ranch with the brand XS. Elon Musk bought that ranch.
Oh.
Okay. That was his former ranch. Now, he moved to Bastrop. He fled California, and he's got a SpaceX in Brownsville. He's got, I think, one in McGregor also, which is not too far from the Bush Ranch. And then he has one now that he moved into Bastrop, along with the boring company, which is boring tunnels. And now he's building a town. He called it a snail town in Bastrop, the same place that we fled, because the policing units there, is my assertion that they are pretty corrupt, and that they're working in conjunction with the cartel, which there was a cartel. There's a cartel person that killed our friend on Susie's ranch, which was in Camp Swift. His name was Chet Swift, and he was related to Taylor Swift. And at one point he said, "Taylor's good, Penny. I met her when she was a baby." And I said, and all the hairs on my neck stood up. I said, "No, Chet, Taylor ain't good." And so I wrote a blog for him. I wrote a chapter 23, and I said, "Chet, did you read it?" And he's like, "Yes, Penny, Taylor ain't good no more." So Susie recently, had to go back to Bastrop because there's still some pending stuff. But she sent me pictures of the town that he's building, and he's now working with the corrupt faction in Bastrop, because Bastrop is not only just its law isn't just corrupt, but there's heavy presence of cartel, and it's a meth town as well. Susie, you want to tell me a little bit about it?
Hang on, let me unmute her. Go.
Yeah. Okay. So Bastrop. Yeah. Okay. So I got a prophecy back in 2011, and it came through like a couple different preachers. And basically they said what they talked about, there was going to be some heat that was going to melt some things, and it was going to be a big drop, and that God was going to remove a bunch of evil politicians, and this is going to happen in Bastrop, that there was going to be fire, but it wasn't going to be a Holy Spirit fire. It was going to be like a curse to the town, and that the Bastrop was basically cursed. And then the preacher told me that it was all about me, and it was going to start at my gate. And that's what Penny was saying about, we had cartels shooting and killing a friend of ours who was a special forces, Air Force, and he was also
a sniper. He was a career sniper for 20 years. He served 8 tours in Southeast Asia. He was security forces for Princess Margaret, for Chancellor Cole, for Bush, for Nixon. We have pictures of him in front of Nixon's plane. I'm sorry, Susie, go on.
Yes. So he had done all these things, and he came to Bastrop, and he had said that he had came there to protect me and my family, that God sent him there. And so he was only there, I don't know what, 20 days, Penny, and he was shot down
Yeah,
by
shy of a month. And I actually told him that he was being watched by one of his commanding officers was Michael Aquino. He was a career sniper.
Oh,
He was a career
oh,
sniper. He
geez.
became a mercenary. And one of his missions, the generals came to him, some rogue faction of the generals came to him and said that Aquino had gone rogue in Southeast Asia and they wanted him taken out. And so he went back to Fort Bragg and he studied him because he was like, he didn't think there was anything wrong with him. And then he tried to do his mission and he got stabbed, I think went into a coma. And so the night before he died, he had gone into town and he texted Susie and said he wanted to continue his mission. He wanted to, you know, fulfill his commission, his assignment. And
Yeah.
And he had asked her, how did they know that I'd be so good at killing? He was having some thoughts about, you know, how he was going to talk to his grandchildren about being a mercenary at one time. And one time he told me that his friend of his was molested by a priest. So he said he went to the Vatican and delivered some ordnance. And I was kind of mad. I was like, you delivered ordnance to the Vatican? Seriously?
Whoa.
Think about
Wow.
it, Tony. He was, think about it. He said, I delivered some ordnance. And I was like, oh, okay. All right. I get it. Because he, you know, his friend committed suicide because of what this priest did to him. So I think he took out the priest. And he was also involved in some other high targets, which he did not say specifically who they were, but we thought maybe he might have been involved in the termination of a very high profile drug lord and his bodyguard.
Huh. So
That
what's your,
was-
you said something about data. You were asking something about data.
Well, I said that I know that you had access to the data proposition, but right now we're going to the Elon Musk as well, because Elon Musk is involved in Bastrop and is involved with this woman, I think, perhaps, because she dies in a Tesla and she is Mitch McConnell's sister.
Yeah, sister-in-law.
Yes.
Sister-in-law.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
Ciao.
So yes, ciao. So we're going to go back. Go ahead and tell her about that, because you also you saw, God told you that Bastrop was going to be huge, and you saw something which was unusual about a robotic faction. But let's take a step back and continue where you were regarding this murder and the prophecy, because it's kind of important.
Okay, so the prophecy said that what starts at my gate will be to remove a bunch of politicians, and it will start in Bastrop, but it will spread across the nation. So God was going to use this, and what I believe that it was that it was going to expose a lot of corruption. What happened when Chet was actually shot at my gate on my ranch, murdered. Okay. And there was a huge conspiracy of people that were involved in the takedown. And so there's video and different things now that will actually expose all these corrupt individuals that are all tied into this. And so after we left that area, after the shooting, after the murder, we left, and then Elon Musk moved into Bastrop. So, and he moved in out on a road called 969, and he built a boring company to bore tunnels underground, and then SpaceX, and then he's building a city also. And then he purchased a lot of land that belonged to the man that raised me, pretty much was like my father. And then he had a big ranch that he had passed away. And this ranch ended up as under Elon Musk. So Elon Musk now, and I had a dream, and before Elon Musk moved there, and I saw this gigantic red robot coming up out of Bastrop, rising straight up, and then turning like this and taking off, going toward like Dallas. And I thought, what was that? It was some kind of red robotic thing coming out of Bastrop, which I do think it had something to do with Elon Musk. Yeah.
Huh. He's definitely in the field.
That was many years ago, Ginny.
Was it flying? Susie, was it flying?
Yes.
So like some sort of drone.
Like a robotic
rocket?
or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe a drone.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now we know that Elon Musk also
Very
builds
large. Very large.
drones, and you and I had a discussion, Ginny, about how a drone could actually help to take down the grid. And he was on a show with one of the night hosts, and he had talked about how he could build a drone army for relatively, little funding and take out an entire city within a matter of hours with that drone army. So
Oh, he
let's
needs
go,
to stop.
yeah. So let's go back to Ginny. And Ginny, how could a drone army take out a city, and how could it actually perhaps maybe take out an entire grid? And this is a threefold thing. We also know that he has satellites, which the satellites have been employed to assist in warring conditions. So he sent his satellites out for his Starlink satellites out for Ukraine. He also was going to give his satellite system to Gaza, but then Netanyahu opposed it. So he went out and talked to Netanyahu, and something happened where all of a sudden, I don't know if he's on Israel's side or not, but Gaza did not get that Starlink. So, so let's go to, how can a drone army take out a city in a matter of hours? Can it take down a power grid? And can this individual make many of these things? Could Elon Musk effectively, create a nuke and take out a country?
I don't know about getting a nuke. I suppose, if, the dude can pretty much do whatever he wants, right? He's got all the money in the world. So, there are a lot of rogue nuclear isotopes running around that are not controlled and not in the best hands. That's why they worry about suitcase nukes, because suitcase nukes they're more of a panic and fear weapon, but a panic and fear kills more people than any nuclear material ever did. But think about a drone with a power system. The answer is absolutely yes, especially if number one, you think about it, all these power substations are registered in the GPS system, and they use drones these days, to fly along the large power lines to inspect them, to make sure there's nothing shorting or no down.
I know that.
Looking at insulation and stuff like that. So all those coordinates are logged for every substation. And it wouldn't take a very expensive drone to go into none of the substations are very well protected. There's at the most, you're going to see a chain link fence around them.
Right. So if it was a drone, we discussed this before. So could a drone, in fact, start a fire and then disappear?
What do you mean disappear?
Could it start a fire and then go back to its owner, and you can never trace where it happened?
Absolutely.
Not who the owner is.
Yeah,
I would think so.
No problem. Just put a small laser on it. Find some volatile material or a gas tank, something like that.
How can a drone army take out an entire city?
Well, think about it. If you take the power down, the first thing that's going to happen is gridlock. Everybody's going to be stuck at the big traffic jam. And so they're going to be on foot, or they're not going to move. So they're kind of stuck. And most people are not going to abandon their cars. They're not going to be on foot. They're going to stay with their car. They don't want to lose their car, right? And they have no idea if the power is going to come back on anytime soon. So they're going to, for a certain period of time, they're going to stick with their cars. And that makes them sitting ducks. Because all it takes for a drone is to, come through and drop a small explosives package. Or, and the question is how, by taking out a city, what you're talking really about is the first immediate stuff is taking out all the functions of a city, which is the traffic lights, the hospitals, the ambulances, the police, the communications.
So power grid.
the power grid is the perfect place to start. And then there's the water system. Okay, so a drone could fly over a reservoir and dump a package of poison in there. And, you know, people aren't going to think about it. It might take a little while, but that's going to go through the entire system. So people could drop dead from a poison that's dumped into a reservoir. And I used to help my sister do the surface water report for USGS. My sister was a hydrologist, and I used to help her crunch all the numbers for all the wells and reservoirs in the Delaware, Maryland, and Virginia aquifers, Anacostia River and the Potomac and the Delaware River, all that. And so I've seen pictures of all the water infrastructure around Washington, D.C., and it's completely vulnerable. It's open to the air. And at the most, you're going to see like a chain link fence protecting a wellhead or something like that, you know. And so there might be good, excuse me, there might be good security around, like, say, a water purification facility. There might be good security there, but usually not.
Maybe from a land incursion, but not from an aerial incursion.
Well, yeah, and I have talked a lot about drones on the shows. We had a problem with drones out here. There was an unknown player out here that was kind of riding on the coattails of a little civilian drone program. It was a hobby drone thing they had up at a crop duster airport, and because this is a big ag area, and but the thing is, right out of that same airport, there was somebody else, and they were, I don't know what the heck they thought they were doing, but these drones were about the size of a Volkswagen, and people would come home at night at 8:30 and find a drone hovering at eye level in their driveway.
What the hell?
Yeah, and they were chasing the cows. I mean, this is a big beef producing area. This is where we have Coleman Natural Beef is up here. And we've got a lot of Angus. There's that message again. Anyway, yeah, people are having trouble with drones, big drones. I mean, those are very, very expensive pieces of equipment. And so I say it was some rogue paramilitary organization just having fun with the yokels, you know. And my recommendation, you know, one of the weapons of the coming century, of the coming time, is nothing to do with guns. It's a laser pointer, a powerful laser pointer.
Yep.
Because if you blind a drone, you don't hurt it, you don't burn it, you don't set it on fire. But if you do flash it and blind it, it's going to rely on its GPS, and it'll return to its origin point. Rather than crash, it's going to go up and fly away and go back to its safe, its safe location. Because they don't want to lose their investment. So all drones are programmed to return to base if they have a technical problem. So
Now,
you give it a technical problem.
we did want to discuss a little bit about the direct energy weapons. So can a drone have a direct energy weapon on it?
I can have one in my hand. That's a laser is a directed energy weapon.
Yes.
You know, and there are other kinds of direct energy weapons that aren't that easily available to us, but they're easily mounted on a drone or a helicopter or a plane. You know, they don't have to be on satellites. And the thing about them, I mean, the most damaging ones are the microwave lasers. They're called masers. And that's the thing that I think hit Maui. I think Maui was a test. I think there were several types of technology being used at Maui, at least 3 that I can determine by what I saw.
So now we have fires here.
Yeah.
What was Biden alluding to about the fires in Texas? And also, it's not too far from a nuclear.
Pantex.
Yes.
Yeah.
Underground, correct?
A lot of it is.
Yeah.
I have friends there. I think Pantex is pretty safe.
What is Pantex? Where is there? Can you tell our audience what Pantex is, what they do there, and is it above ground or underground?
Both.
Okay.
It's both. It's pretty much the whole town is Pantex, and their job is to decommission and recommission nuclear warheads. That's their job.
Okay, that
And
sounds
by the
scary.
way, it is scary, but those are the most competent people in the entire complex, as far as I can see. I know several of them, and I've toured the facility, and I've done training with them, and boy, they really do mind their P's and Q's.
So what
They're
is there?
pretty good.
Storing nuclear weaponry there?
It wouldn't be storing; it's being processed
What does that mean?
there. Well, sometimes they're too old and they're leaky, or there's a it's kind of involved, but there's a thing called the Wigner effect. The Wigner effect is things become brittle when they're exposed to constant radiation. Metal and rubber and plastic and wood, it all becomes brittle and weak. And so after a period of time, a nuclear warhead has to be decommissioned and replaced. And so they'll do testing on the metal. They'll bring, like a stock of warheads in, and they'll remove the nuclear material, and then they'll do tests on the metal. They'll do an assay. They'll do sample testing to see whether that lot has radiation damage to the metal casings and stuff like that. And then the wiring coverings, all the wire covers, all that kind of stuff. So they have to be taken apart and restored, and then put back together and then shipped off.
I guess it's just like anything that you have that's been up and running for years.
Yeah.
Things have to be replaced.
Things tend to have an accelerated brittleness, in the presence of radiation. Certainly people do.
Yeah, right.
But so anyway, what I'm recommending is that people, all right, I'm looking into it, and I found a pretty good deal on one. I'm thinking the weapon of the future is like a 5-watt green laser pointer.
The green one?
Yeah, particularly green or blue. And they make astronomy lasers that are pretty powerful. Like if you're going to a planetarium show, they'll point a laser up at a constellation and name it, or a planet or whatever. The laser doesn't go that far, but it's strong enough that people can see the beam and see what you're pointing at.
So what would you say to the people in Texas that have had over 1.1 million, I think it is that right, Susie? Acres that were
that's this, what do they call that? Smoky Creek fire.
1.6 million acres now burned.
Yeah, 5 different fires.
And so what would you say to them in regards to, is it Plantex? Is that what it's called?
Pantex.
What would you say to them? Would you say you're okay, you're safe?
I would say, yeah. That's just my first hit on it, even without knowing the conditions. But I know that those people they're the most prepared, and I think they're the safest plant in the nation, actually.
Well, that's
of all the
good
plants.
to know. That's really good to know.
Yeah. Yeah, no,
you don't have a bunch of dummies wandering around in there going.
That's right. They have a really amazing emergency response organization there, and they've got good planning. I don't know. If there is one place in the whole country of all the facilities, all the DOE facilities, I would probably put that one at the top for safety. So I wouldn't be too worried about it. There's plenty of other things to worry about.
Oh, yeah.
But I will tell you, there is one other aspect of it, and that is, if the laws might have changed. I retired in 2012. So in that time, the laws might have changed. But the policy before I left, I had to design courses for senior energy officials, people that administer all the resources in the course of a big emergency. And it was the course, that was a bear of a course to design. But so 2/3, okay, if there's an emergency in a building, say at a complex like Los Alamos, if there's an emergency in a single building or within the plant boundary, the public's not going to hear about it unless it escapes containment. And then if it goes beyond the plant boundary, then the public has to be made aware of it. So that's basically, I would say, the lion's share of events and little emergencies and things like that happen. The public's never going to hear about them. And that's probably just as well, because people don't understand and they might panic. Yeah. But I'll tell you, if you do live within 10 miles of a nuclear facility, even like Pantex, it's really very wide. I think everybody should have potassium iodide in their medicine cabinet. Potassium iodide, because, I wrote a scenario that I wasn't allowed to use for a course. And in that was the beginning. I worked with an animator, and the introduction to the Senior Energy official course. See, these are fuddy-duddy guys. They're guys that have to manage an emergency to get the next step up in the hierarchy, right? So, they're not young, and they're usually pretty smug and pompous and well-educated, but they're also politician-type people, for the most part. And I wanted to shake them. And so the little scenario that I designed for the beginning of that course was people installing in the pre-dawn hours of at Topeka and outside of Sacramento and a couple of other places outside of Colorado Springs and outside of Albuquerque, terrorists would break into a crop duster hangar and install a low-grade radioactive material like an alpha emitter, like chaff. The military sometimes uses alpha chaff because it's alpha radiation, it only penetrates 1 inch, so, and it's the various alpha emitters usually have a real quick half-life. They degrade down into nothing over a period of days. There's that message again. That's crazy. Anyway, so the scenario was that the crop dusters would take off as the sun was rising, and they would head for the nearest big city, and they would empty their alpha chaff over the city, which would then set off radiation pager alarms in all the responder facilities. And then the chaff would be descending to the streets where people would breathe it in because, and it's mainly a panic weapon, but it would cause an increase in cancer because even though it can only penetrate 1 inch, if you're breathing in the particles, that's 1 inch of your lung tissue. So it could cause tumors.
Yes.
And
Brooks Agnew had suggested that the possibility of spraying some substance like fentanyl.
Oh my God.
Yes.
Oh,
Well, that's death. Death on the wind. Yeah.
And
Well, anyway, so they wouldn't let me use that scenario, and they told me that I couldn't use it because it was too close to real.
what is the purpose of the creation of the scenario if not to be aware of the realities?
Well, yeah, that's in the end of this little vignette at the beginning of the course. It fades to black as the planes are crashing into the nearest emergency response buildings, like big hospitals or police stations. Planes run out of gas and crash down into these rescue facilities, and screen fades to black, and there's a phone ringing, and it's what?
Jenny, Susie has a question.
Okay. Well, let me finish that one thing.
Okay.
Let me finish that one thing. So at the end, it just says, "The phone's ringing. Wake up! You're leading the response on this emergency." And it was to try to shake them and make them more receptive, to the stuff they're going to have to do.
Yes. Susie?
Okay,
Yes, Susie.
I have a question. Okay, so the potassium iodine, could you tell us a little bit about it and how to use it and what its purpose is?
Okay, one of the quickest forming And most lethal isotopes in a nuclear explosion or a nuclear power plant problem is iodine 131. And iodine 131 gets taken up by your thyroid. It's radioactive and it'll cause tumors. So the idea of the potassium iodide is that you take it as quickly as soon as you find out there's any radiation release of any type. You take one a day for like 10 days. And basically, it's potassium iodide. It gets taken up by your thyroid really fast. And so your thyroid is completely filled with the good iodide instead of the stuff in the air that's going to hurt you.
Now, what if your thyroid no longer works?
Well, then I don't know if it's going to take up very much. You know,
oh, man, I am messed up.
I still would take it though. I would still take the potassium iodide.
Because I can't take ivermectin either because I was told because I'm on 2 blood thinners that it can cause me to internally bleed.
Nice.
So I can't take it. Yeah, that's what I said. Okay. Oh,
I don't think potassium iodide has really any effect other than to supply your thyroid with clean iodide, or iodine.
Put it back in.
Yeah, and so it basically.
Where can people get that? Should everyone?
You can buy it online.
Should everyone have that in their household?
I do. Yep.
I have another question for you in regards to the suitcase nukes, which we know there was a Russian who was a general, and he was actually a general in charge of secret projects, and it was my belief, I think it was in 2000, I think it was last year when he killed himself in Russia, and I thought that it was perhaps a sign that they were awakening the sleeper agents across the world. And there were many, I had a friend who said there were many more than just 17 nukes that were dispersed. He said closer to 200. What would be the resultant? Would it be like an aerial? I think Susie had mentioned maybe 8 miles if one of those went off, that would be radiated.
We don't know what the rating would be on a suitcase nuke. We don't know the power of that. And I say the scariest suitcase nuke is the one that gets set off that you don't know it got set off. Like if you're waiting in a subway, on a subway station, and terrorists set off a suitcase nuke a mile down the train track, and the train comes along and brings all that dust and junk with it onto the subway platform. That's when the radiation count just goes bonkers and everybody gets exposed.
Would a suitcase nuke cause, damage to buildings? And
could. Depends on what kind of power. See, now most people think a suitcase nuke. Now that's different than a dirty bomb, though. A suitcase nuke is supposed to be a small nuclear explosion. A dirty bomb is just a bunch of nuclear isotopes that are in a powder form that get dispersed when a conventional explosive goes off. So a dirty bomb and a suitcase nuke are 2 different things. And I remember hearing that report about the multiple suitcase nukes that had gotten loose during the fall of the Soviet Union. Yes. And the number I heard was like 8 to 12. And the thing is, a lot of people debunk that, and I don't know what to think. I don't know what to believe. But I think the problem with a suitcase nuke is it takes a lot of technical knowledge to be able to handle one, to be able to set it right, to detonate. And I'm sure there are people that have that kind of expertise, but
yes.
I don't think you can't really say what the dispersion's going to be, right, because we don't know what kind of isotopes they've got in there, and the other question is, how are they going to trigger it? Because triggering a criticality isn't all that easy. That was the big problem they had in World War II, was for Little Boy and Fat Man to get the triggering. And it's not trivial. it takes quite a bit to trigger a nuclear explosion.
So, would you say that, reasonably speaking, that these individuals that might have possession of these, working for a cartel or for cabal, would have achieved substantial training in order to be able to carry off this mission?
Definitely. Yeah, but there are people that have that training. And I think, that, I forget the name of that movie. It was a movie where they had a bomb in a pop machine. Yeah, at the, like a sports stadium. It was like a Coke machine or something. And I think that would be the most likely way they would do that. I think they really did study the technology. That would be the ideal way, is, to have like a large sporting event and then have a Coke machine or something like that can protect, all the delicate machinery that's in there to blow it up,
Could they blow it up remotely?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Sure. Yeah, because every nuclear explosion starts out with a conventional explosion. Okay, in order to be able to accelerate particles, it's like a staged set of explosions. And basically, you got a conventional explosion that ignites and compresses the uranium, and then the uranium compresses, and then it goes into the plutonium, which is the uranium on the outside is like U-238 or something. But the main explosion is going to be the plutonium is in the trigger, and then that will ignite a larger bunch of purified uranium. And so it's got to be a bunch of staged explosions that kind of up the energy to get to the point where it can explode the plutonium. So it's not trivial.
No.
That was the big problem with the World War II bombs, was getting the triggers to fire correctly, the timing and all that.
We have about 9 more minutes. Susie, did you have any questions?
Hang on. Let me
Virginia?
unmute her. Give me a minute.
I'm good.
Go ahead. Are you okay?
Hi.
This is Andy, who is also on the team. Andy, did you have any questions for Ginny? She's a former DOE.
No, not offhand.
Hi, Andy. Hi, Andy.
Brenda, do you have any questions?
Actually, no. This has been very interesting.
I know that we've been all over the globe in this conversation, but we literally have covered like 10,000 miles in various various scenarios. But
and we didn't even talk about HARP.
Right. You're gonna have to come back
next time.
And this is the way we roll. We just throw a bunch of stuff at you, throw some darts at you, and you just catch them and tell us what's going on. How can people get in touch with you if they have any questions? Is there an email or something that they can contact you? Do you have
a hard one?
Do you have any PayPals or anything?
No.
That people can help you? No? Okay.
No.
So what's your email?
It's Ms. Electromagnetic, which is Ms. Electromagnetic 777 at protonmail.com. Of course, it's Proton Mail.
Of course, and is it Miss Electronic?
Ms. Electromagnetic.
Miss Electromagnetic. Yeah,
777.
I remember the first time I tried to email you, I was like, Miss Electromagnetic. What is that about? And you're just so talented. And you're one of the kindest people that I've ever met in my life. How
do you know that? You didn't see me torturing those flies.
No, I didn't. But I've talked to you, offline for hours, and you have such a fascinating life, and you're such a kind person. I know the things that you've done behind the scenes to try and help people, and how you also have been taken advantage of by certain people, as we all have. Those of us that have a kind heart, we try to help people and just get effed over. Susie knows exactly what I'm talking about.
So, Susie, you had a question. Didn't Susie have a question?
She said she's good, but I can't unmute her because Brenda, who just left the building,
apparently,
she'll be back because we only have about 6 more minutes. I want to tell people also, Jenny is on our show, The Awake Nation. She comes with a found of PowerPoints and such, incredible information. She's on every 2 weeks, but we're like, stepping her back because she has other things to do.
Yeah.
And
It's been a busy time.
yes. And so she's on the Awake Nation on, I believe it's every other Tuesday. And she's on for an hour from 10 to 11 Central. That's 9 to 10 Mountain, and 11 to 12 Eastern time. And so if you want to join us on the Awake Nation, we are available Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 11 a.m. Central, from 9 to 12 noon Eastern. We do a half hour of news, which is why I am kind of up on some of the news and why I asked you about Chow. Hello? Brenda? Because you kind of disappeared. I guess we're still live because it says we're still recording. So you can find us at the Awake Nation Monday through Friday, which I said. And we have a plethora of guests. If you want to contact me and you want to be on the Awake Nation, you can contact me at 619-779-9771. I got the sevens also, Ginny. That's 619-779-9771. I co-host with David Zublik, the fabulous David Zublik, who I call my brother, and he's a very good friend of mine. And so I encourage you to please join us on the Awake Nation. Also, you can find Susie Q on the Awake Nation. She's on Fridays, every other Friday. And she also is on the Dark Outpost with Hot Shots, which is her show segment, in which she gives hot shots of information regarding everything from the Super Soldier program to a biblical analysis of things that are going on. And then also, she's making me seasick here, Susie.
Yeah, I never gone all over the place.
And I don't
Can
see you because you've disappeared. You've now become just the head, which is on the back.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I can hear you.
Something really weird happened to my computer, and I'm going to have to probably make a phone call to find out what it was. But it wasn't my computer, it was my internet.
All right.
We
don't see you at all. All we see is the head that I put.
I know.
Right?
I know. I have to. I don't know what's going on, but something really weird happened to my internet, and it's being troubleshooting my butt.
Okay. All right. So, we all, and on the Awake Nation, we also have intersessions with various factions of our governmental entities, anywhere from CIA, NSA, FBI, which are all watching the Awake Nation as well. Ginny, I want to thank you very much for taking the time out of your day or your evening to join us here.
My pleasure.
Jenny, thank you so
and to
much
field all the questions that we just threw at you one after another on various subjects. That's the way we roll. We cross talk.
Cool.
We cross talk.
Yeah. I can't wait for you to get a computer, Susie.
Oh, I'm getting it. I'm going
I can't
tomorrow.
talk. I'm muted.
Look,
and we don't like being muted.
Even if I have to sleep in the car on the way up there, I'm going.
Yes,
Right on.
That computer's
she's coming
with me.
tomorrow.
That's
so
right.
Susie,
Right on.
fix that problem so Susie can talk, because that's the whole point of being on a talk show is to be able to talk.
Yeah.
So we have 2 more minutes. Anybody want to have some closing remarks?
I want to say something.
Do it.
Elon Musk, I got to come down there and talk to you about this internet thing, because you and I have to have a discussion.
Oh, are you on Starlink?
Yes.
Oh.
2 years. 2 years now.
Oh, wow.
Test
Okay.
subject.
Right. Well.
And I just got zapped with something, and I don't even know what it was. But boy, I'll tell you what, this is a brand new. My
Maybe
computer's
an
brand
EMP.
new.
Brand
new
direct energy
computer.
weapon.
I should be getting no kinds of any kind of troubleshooting that I have to do.
Maybe we were too far out of the box.
Oh, well.
Wait. Well, she's
That's
in the
okay.
box. No, look at. Can you see Susie, Ginny? Susie's
what?
on her phone, which is causing all the problems, but she's literally in the box.
I see that
See
you're
ya.
in the box.
She's,
Susie in the box.
she's literally the present
All
in
right.
the box. That's it. We're done.
All right, everybody.
Okay.
Yes,
seconds.
we are. So y'all have a good night.
You
Join
too.
us next Friday. I will be posting the shows. And hang on, it looks like Susie's waving me down. Give me a minute here. Go ahead, Susie.
We just see the head. That's all we see. The head and the logo.
Oh.
So.
Right.
Did you want to say something?
No, I was just, trying to get
wait,
everybody.
Waving goodbye. Goodbye.
All right, everybody.
Good night.
Have a good
Bye.
night. Bye.